we get a common question about how to expand introverbals, how to expand to feature function class, how to expand teaching categories of things like teaching these are all animals and these are all colors. So today I wanted to dive in and show everyone where to go when your child has, say, groups 1 and 2 of the introverbal subtest, pretty solid, how to expand. I know way back, oh my gosh, I think my son was 4 or 5 years old, so he's 28 now. So a long time ago, I went up to Dr. Vincent Carbone. I saw him at a workshop, and I went up to him and I said, I think it was on intermediate learners. And I said to him, don't you think intermediate learners just get stuck? Like I felt like I was killing myself for introverbals with my son, Lucas. And he said, no, it's just you don't have the right prerequisites in place and nobody should get stuck. While I agree to a point, I do think that in my case, my son never became fully conversational. We were able to master a whole lot of language and a whole lot of mini conversational language. So I think in a way it does get a little rough at sections. And I think after kids get, if they have no introverbals, if they get groups 1 and 2, sometimes you just need some major techniques to get them to the next level. So let's look at an introverbal subtest of a child who is 7 years old. Not that that matters at all, but if the child was 2 years of age, the introverbal subtest should not be, there should be very little on the introverbal subtest that's mastered at a 2-year-old level. But whether this child is 5, 7, 12, this is where the language is at this point. So the first group, so Dr. Mark Sundberg wrote the Introverbal subtest as a supplement to the VB-MAPP way back, and he started writing it and field testing it. I was a part of field testing it in 2006. It is free at avbpress.com. We have it embedded within our courses as it's a major tool to help us get kids from, this level to a better level of language development. So group 1 is animal sounds and song fill-ins. So a kitty says, twinkle, twinkle, little star. So this little boy has, ready, set. He answered go. The parent said wheels on the bus go. He said round and round. You get the idea. A dog says woof, woof. Kitty says meow. Itsy bitsy spider. So group 1 is all fill in the blanks. So when you think about fill in the blanks, so a dog says woof woof or you sleep in a bed is easier than where do you sleep or what does a dog say. So group 1 are all fill-ins. Now, if you have a child that can answer what does a dog say, he can also answer a dog says woof woof. So when if you are to the point where you're doing mixed VB, index cards, I would recommend you automatically take whatever the higher form of the question is to put it on the card. So if he can answer what does a dog say, I would put that on the blue card for introverbal mixed VB versus a dog says. But when you're testing, when you're assessing, you should read the question as is. Now, this isn't the kind of test where, if he has a no response for 3 seconds and then you ask him again and he has a good response, like it's fine. But what you don't want to do is, count things that are, just, you don't want to count errors as correct. So you do want to be somewhat, if they error and then they say the right thing afterwards, the error on the side of marking it as a negative because we don't want to build a structure on a wobbly base. So group 2 of the introverbal assessment is answering what's your name. You brush your filled in teeth. This little boy didn't get shoes and, but that's kind of a weird one. Um, I guess he's supposed to say socks, but shoes and sneakers, shoes and like there are different things that I would accept as correct, and it's not a big deal. And if you get 9 out of 10, I would say that you pretty much mastered the category, which this little boy did. You eat. Um, so here he did correct. So mom wrote down, she said you eat, and he said spoon, but he corrected to banana after a few seconds. You sleep in night, he corrected to bed after the second time. Now, that was really good that she put those down. She did count them as correct. I may have presented those a few times, like maybe 5 times, not in a row, but maybe circled back. And if he did the error and then corrected himself, I would probably mark it as a negative, because like I said, you don't want to build on a wobbly base. Okay, so now we get to group 3, and this little boy just repeated the last word, but these kind of questions, so groups 1 and 2 are pretty solid. This is a very common place where kids kind of stop responding correctly, especially kids that are taught, this mom has been really dedicated towards her teaching her son, and she's been, getting him to respond, which is amazing. But if you fall apart at group 3 and 4, that is a very the questions get a lot harder. So we go from fill in the blanks. You sleep in to questions like what can you drink? What can fly? What are some numbers? What can you sing? What's your favorite movie? What are some colors? So those are a class, a category. And if they just answer one color, that's not acceptable. You got to get a couple colors. What do you read? What is outside? What's in a kitchen? What are some animals? Again, animals. Kitchen here, I think in the next category is there's some kind of where is a refrigerator. So for any child that is now we're just diving right into Introverbals. There's a whole lot more we need to look at when we're, looking at a child. We need to look at their overall functioning level in terms of self-care, language, problem behaviors, the Becca assessment, the Barbera Early Childhood Assessment, all those things, all those spinning plates are going. We're diving in here to, if we are going to program for Introverbals and feature function class, how are we going to, what should be our next step? So in general, we want to, when we're looking at groups 1 and 2, we want to expand songs and animal sounds and fill-ins. And if we can get the fill-ins to be more questiony type of fill-in instead of fill-ins, that's good too. However, I will say that, so song fill-ins I think are definite. So instead of just doing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, you could put that on an index card, but we should teach kids to sing the last word of each sentence or sing the whole song. And the way you do that is by doing song time and by doing, Twinkle Twinkle Little, and then he can say star. How I wonder what you are. How I wonder what you are. Now let's start over. Twinkle, twinkle, little. He answers star. How I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high. So we're leaving our own blanks and then filling it in an exaggerated tone. You can do this with songs, with prayers. It's very functional, whether you're in school, whether you're doing home. Music classes tend to be a hit with kids. So that's kind of a separate thing. And then when we look at animals and animal sounds, we have to really be careful that the child doesn't start just answering. If we focus too much on the sounds, they might, what we call, lose the tact, or they might stop responding. Or you show them a cow and then they say, moo moo says the cow, and then you accept that as correct. And it's not wrong, but we also want to teach other things like where does a cow live? What does a cow say? What color is a cow? Uh, what do you do? Where does milk come from? All kinds of things. And so if we're getting responses that we call those conditional discrimination, they're not understanding the question. But when you think about learning a foreign language, these questions get harder and harder. So it's not whether a child can do introverbals, it's the level of introverbals. So if I say, what do you eat? And they say banana, that's fine. Now, if I ask a harder question, what do you eat for breakfast? Now it got harder. Now, what do you eat for breakfast that's warm? Now that got harder. Now we're talking cold, hot, warm. Then what do you eat for breakfast that's warm that your brother doesn't like? Now we add a negation. And that's the environment we live in with all kinds of language. So we want to make sure that when we're teaching animal sounds that they're not, what does a cow say? They're not erroring. What says roar? Um, we want to make sure that it's all fluid. Now, in general, when you teach fill in the blanks or teach introverbals, we want to teach with pictures. So we want to, there's two ways to ask. You sleep in a bed. The answer is a picture. So you could have a picture in the field of pictures on the table of a bed. But if I say, what do you do with a bed? There's no picture. You know what I mean? So the reversals, even with animal sounds, roar, roar says we have a picture of the different animals to choose from. But if I say, what does a cat say? There's no picture of meow. So in general, we want to teach the way where the picture is the answer and worry about reversals later. And the more natural we can teach all of this, the better. So if you don't have to get lists of things and teach very carefully, that's all good too. I have a book program in my courses where we really take books that we loan from libraries that we're just looking at 2 or 3 times, asking natural environment questions for these kind of things. That's all good too. But kids that are just answering groups 1 and 2 accurately, we don't want to be shoving a whole lot of extra language at them and novel books when they don't have these things necessarily mastered completely. We also could do fluency. So, say we want to make sure they don't lose the tact for animals as we're intertwining animal sounds. We could put out 8 pictures of different animals that they know. And just like, we're just going to name the animals. Let's go quick. My mommy's turn. Cat, dog, pig, horse. And then, okay, your turn. Cat, dog, pig, horse. And we can make them go fast and fun and keep it all light. The other thing you can do is, I know you want to expand Introverbals, but maybe less, not every time you hold up a cow, you ask what it says. people tend to focus on colors a lot, but if you ask a child what is it and they say yellow chair, I didn't ask the color. Again, we need to teach a lot more about things than colors. So if you're hyper focusing on animal sounds, hyper focusing on colors, that's probably not a good idea. What's your name is very functional. I usually just recommend teaching kids their first name to answer, because that's more typical for little kids. And then from groups 3 and 4, I do think a super functional thing to teach even at this level where your 1 and 2 are solid, is rooms in a house. So, and things in rooms. So it's a house. The whole thing is called a house. We live in can say house. Okay, we could use a doll house potentially. When we're teaching features, it's really important that we use, whenever possible, 3D items like the actual refrigerator or a little model of a refrigerator or a little model of a car, because stuffed animals for the tail. Because if I'm just using a little picture of a dog and I'm trying to teach the feature of a tail, what's this part called? My big finger is over half the dog, right? But if I have a stuffed animal of a dog or a 3D dollhouse refrigerator, I can teach the shelves or a real refrigerator. But we're going to have to, be standing there a while and not just expect a child, like my son. He didn't learn in the natural environment. I would teach him at the table, and then we could generalize it to the real item. But whenever possible, I would teach, pictures of the whole room first. So the whole kitchen, your whole bathroom, if you call it a family room or whatever, where there's a TV, a bedroom. So get the rooms, get the house, and then start teaching the things in the rooms. Instead of focusing on minute objects and features, I would teach features of a room, a refrigerator's almost always in a kitchen, a sink's always in a kitchen and a bathroom. So teach sink, but don't teach sinks always in the kitchen. Teach sink first, teach refrigerator first, have them label without a lot of extra information. I think that's where people who are anxious to teach more language kind of can make a little bit more of a mess of things by over teaching and not getting objects fluent, getting rooms fluent before they're teaching them a lot of information about that. And then the final thing I wanted to cover in this short blog podcast is teaching categories and subcategories. I think it is a really important thing to teach. And in group 3 and 4 of the Introverbal subtest, we do have what are some colors, what are some animals. And so this particular child of having groups 1 and 2 solid, it is time to teach categories. But we have to do it carefully because it can get messy. In my intermediate learner course in module 4, I have a whole way that I developed to teach categories or class to my son and then to many children that I worked with. And the way I would teach is through sorting. So you have to have matching, identical matching, and then sorting by animals. But let's put all the animals here. Let's put all the colors here. And let's put all the furniture here. And you see, furniture kind of goes with the rooms. Colors, if the child is pretty good with colors, that's a great place to start. And eventually, within my intermediate learner course, we talk about introverbal webbing where, you know, tell me a color, the child gets the answer, tell me another color, once you get to yellow, red, or green, we've already taught things that are yellow, red, and green through my category program. I mean, it's elaborate, but that is the answer part of conversation. And I definitely think a child that has group 1 and 2 set pretty well. Make sure you keep all your animals strong, your song fill-ins, your prayers, your songs, and then start teaching rooms and categories. And I think then you'll see some progression on Introverbals and feature function class. But hopefully that helped some of you out there. Now, if you're like, my child doesn't even talk, I don't even know what you're talking about. That's fine. This is for people who, their children are talking, whether they are, have intensive teaching going, or whether this is just kind of where they've naturally progressed to this point. There's always the next step. And I do believe that Dr. Carbone had definitely some good insight into, if we're stuck, it is a matter of getting our procedures better, getting the prerequisites more solid, and moving forward. I do think that intermediate learners, though, in general, those that are level 2, level 3 VB-MAPP kids are tough. And I do think that I have a really good way to teach them all of these skills. So hopefully you can check out a free workshop and tune in for more. But hopefully that was helpful. See you here next time.